Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Headlines with Akhilesh Bhargava and me, Sujit Nair. We have a very interesting episode today, Akhilesh. A very interesting episode because, you see, people like Dr. Subramanian Swamy, the RSS, and a lot of other people, they have been talking about eradicating income tax out of India. Sounds beautiful, sounds very good, makes me feel very good, makes me feel very happy. Now, what they're saying is we eradicate income tax and we have something called as spend tax. Expenditure tax. Okay, so when you spend on something, you buy a pen, you pay say 2%. Okay, you buy anything, you pay X amount of money. You withdraw from your bank, also you pay some taxes, isn't it?
Their suggestion is of two types, expenditure tax as well as a banking transaction tax. Whenever you do a transaction of banking, pay some amount on it. Whenever you spend, you pay some amount on it.
Correct. So you pay the amount only for what you spend or what you withdraw from the bank. Yeah, you only pay for that. So there is no income tax like we have today. Sounds good. But the question is it really good? There are certain flaws in this. A person, middle class Indians, lower middle class Indians, you see, we are the only creed where the income and the expenditure is more or less the same. For a lot of us, possibly the expenditure is far more than the income. So yes, we end up paying taxes. Who benefits from this policy? The rich class that has a huge income and the expenditure is far lesser than what they make. I'm sure Ambani cannot spend 500 crores in a month. He cannot. Even if you want to, you can't spend 500 crores in a month. So what really happens for people who earn a lot of money, they pay no taxes or they pay less taxes. So the advantage of this particular scheme that Dr. Subramanian Swamy or the RSS or a lot of others, and maybe in a way it is not, we are not saying it is bad, but the point is a lot of others are suggesting actually has this very, very serious flaw where the poor, the middle class and the lower middle class ends up paying taxes, where the rich class ends up getting richer and richer because there is no tax on wealth tax. Isn't it, Akhilesh?
How this would work and what is the background, Sujit, is the standard complaint globally is that income tax is a nuisance. Income tax is a nuisance because the law is complicated. People have their own grouses that the tax rates are too high or only these particular communities, being taxed. So and so goes away. So and so gets an exemption. So there's a grouse against income tax globally. And the primary grouse comes in taxes, very complicated to comply with. If you fail in your compliance, there are heavy penalties that come, and there should be a more simpler way. In countries like India, for example, the grouse also comes is that there is corruption around. So why don't we do away with the law and why don't we do away with the department? That is the basic thinking behind what you said. The easiest way that people think that this can be replaced is an expenditure kind of a tax. That anybody who spends money would pay along with the GST an additional amount towards income tax. And they have demonstrated that if you were to do something like this, your tax collection will be actually higher. They've even demonstrated that. But I think for the sake of a simplicity here, simplicity in terms of administering it, you are sacrificing equity and fairness. As you rightly said, you spend any amount, you'll end up paying taxes. So if a poor farmer was to buy a pair of chappals, he'll still pay an income tax, which today he doesn't pay. At the moment, if you have income up to 2.5 lakh rupees, you are not paying taxes.
Exempted.
It's a threshold that exempts you. If you make certain investments, the government likes to demonstrate almost up to 5 lakh rupees. If you make your LIC investment, etc., you get to pay hardly any taxes. But imagine if your income was 5 lakhs and you spent all of it under the expenditure tax, you're going to pay tax throughout. So the poor is going to be taxed any which way because money is going to be spent. If you go by the banking transaction tax as an alternate or as in support of this mechanism, then anybody having a savings account, if he withdraws money, he's again going to be taxed. I think you are getting in a lot of inequity. You're taxing sections of society who don't need to be taxed or who deserve exemptions. Whereas for the rich, is a great situation.
Because if they don't spend, and obviously they don't end up spending the kind of money they earn, that money gets collected as wealth.
Oh, yes. So from that perspective, I think the happiest would be politicians and all those who make money by the wrong way. Because a politician is paying tax. Now he doesn't need to justify his wealth. So all those whose wealth build-up is through wrong means, they would be the happiest. Because on paper they are paying taxes. On whatever they spend, they are paying taxes. That's the end of it. But their wealth build-up that is happening, which they are not spending, is where they would have a bonanza.
Akhilesh, on the hindsight, if you look at it from another perspective, the idea is not really bad, isn't it? I mean,
The idea smells, or it is driven towards simplicity, but
Correct.
it is devoid of equity. It is devoid of fairness.
Is there any way we could mix match the both?
Well, if you do a mixed match where you have an income tax and an income tax department, then what Dr. Subramanian Swamy says is get rid of these. You will not get rid of them.
Correct. So that's out. I'm saying, is there any way that you could actually get into implement the direct taxes?
Yes, the suggestions have come in the sense have one flat rate which is moderate. So don't have slabs of 10%, 20%, 30%. Let's say have a flat rate of 12.5 or 15%. But you still will end up taxing a certain section of society which deserves to be exempted.
Correct. So that
Plus, if you look at the expenditure tax that's going on, Sujit, you will not pay expenditure tax on spending of black money. So that section of society will anyway get away with it.
Correct.
So I think income tax, the way it is, many countries have tried to come up with alternates theoretically. No developed country or no country with a large economy has been able to do away with it. There's no such example.
There's no such example of expenditure taxes.
In fact, the tax law globally is complicated in every country. It gets complex year after year. It gets more and more difficult to comply with. But from an equity perspective, wherein those who earn more should be taxed more versus those who don't earn that much must be taxed less, I think there's no solution to that.
And tell me, so then why GST? Why can't there be one tax? Assuming that we go by what Mr. Dr. Subramanian says, why do you have GST plus expenditure tax? Why can't you just have one expenditure tax which is say 10-20%, for instance?
It would still come down to taxing the lowest section of society heavier.
Correct. I'm not disputing that. So that's now given. It is definitely going to be taxing the lowest society. The rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. Of course, that we agree to that. But the point is there any way then you can at least, if you are talking about simplifying, why then have multiple taxes? Why can't I have one? Number one. Number two, then what you are saying is there is no direct taxes. There'll only be taxes which are implied on sale tax and so on and so forth. The thing is, what one understands is, wouldn't tax be now then, therefore, directly proportional to the consumerism? More people buying things, more things happening. So even the government will be more bothered about that you buy a refrigerator.
That anyway happens in indirect taxation.
It does happen in indirect taxation because of course, but then there is a certain amount of guarantee that the government gets that bhai ye itna kama raha hai to itna to aayega hi, isn't it?
Sujit, if you look at the entire spectrum, the point is the government wants to tax you somehow. Okay. Income tax was virtually not there about 120, 30 years ago. It started in the United Kingdom. It was a temporary measure. Okay. Down the line, the government realized that this needs to be a permanent measure because they need revenue. So as the First World War started coming in, and then of course when the Second World War happened, it became a very standard feature in every nation that you got to tax income because you need the government to run itself. As far as taxation of an indirect nature is concerned, which is production taxes as we call it, that also became a standard feature. It was not there. So if you look from the government perspective, revenue from any source is welcome. This suggestion that comes from the likes of Dr. Subramanian Swamy doesn't try to do away with this principle that the government needs money. They are just trying to say, let it be more simple.
Correct. No, Akhilesh, my earlier question was a little more different. It was a little different. What I wanted to then ask you is, wouldn't the government then have to operate like a consumer durable seller? Yeah, like a consumer product FMCG seller. See, because ultimately the only source of income for this government then would be if people buy things. So if people don't buy, they have no source. That is what I meant. So the government will literally act like a seller in this case. They will promote consumerism.
See, something like that will get simplicity. But like we discussed, how do you then tax ill-gotten gains?
No, but then there's a problem. If the government promotes consumerism, then what about fair price shops? What about subsidized products? It will be dichotomy on itself, because if they promote more subsidized product, if they promote more fair price shops, then they are killing their own income.
See, they will end up probably giving some kind of an exemption to that. But the larger issue, which is tax evasion, will not be tackled.
Correct.
Because if you are only focusing on expenditure tax, then anybody building up wealth, which is not legal, will not come under the radar.
Correct.
And that defeats the very purpose of taxation.
So to conclude, this is a very simple proposition that we are talking about. There's a very simple point that we are trying to talk here. The fact is, if it is expenditure tax, then a person who earns 100 rupees and spends 100 rupees pays the same taxes where a person who earns 1 lakh rupees and spends 100 rupees. There will be no discrepancy on that. But unfortunately, the person who earns 100 rupees and spends 100 rupees will not have 1 rupee saving, but the person who earns 1 lakh rupees will only spend 100 rupees and still have 99,900 rupees as savings. And that wealth is not taxed. Nobody questions that wealth. That's the first problem we have.
Disparities will just shoot up.
Disparity will shoot up big time. So that's the first problem. And the second thing is, the fact remains that the only solution that we see for a government to reduce our tax burden may not be an expenditure tax. The only solution that we see, and we've been constantly saying this, is if government companies, if PSUs like Air India, PSUs like HAL, PSUs starts making money for us. If the PSU starts making money for us, then probably that's the best way for us to reduce the government
tax rates can go down.
Correct. By the looks of what's happening currently, I don't think we are even close to having an effective PSU, effective public undertaking, public sector undertaking. So the question of them earning money is to dur ki baat, as they say. In fact, these PSUs taking money from us is possibly what is being seen currently, isn't it, Akhilesh?
But having said that, Sujit, the fact remains is there will always be a demand for something like this as a rough and ready measure. And it has to do with the kind of tax laws that we have. India is no exception, but that is no justification either. Tax laws are complicated. Tax laws are a nuisance to be able to comply with. I mean, take the case of GST. It was a new law that came. It came complicated from day one. I don't think even the bureaucrats understand it.
Correct. I don't think even the government understands it.
So the demand for something simple will always be there. It only has to do with the kind of laws we have.
But I guess it's not about simplicity anymore. The expenditure taxes has been seen. In fact, it's rumored that if the government comes back into power, if NDA comes back into power, they will actually implement this. So it is actually a promise that they're giving to the Indian electorate. And on the face of it, it sounds good too. So I guess it's not just about simplicity, it's also about money saving. And the point we are trying to make is money saving, yes, but money saving for the rich and not for the poor is what we are saying. So with that, Akhilesh, we'll conclude the show and meet you next time with another topic, another day. Namaskar. For more such episodes, please subscribe to HW News and press the bell icon for instant notification. Also, do give this video a like and share the video to spread the word around.
On the day of election results, everyone talks numbers.
समाजवादी पार्टी 10 पर आगे आ गई है
28,672 ज्यादातर सीटें जो हैं
But we will tell you how these numbers are going to affect your social and economic life.
For accurate analysis, stay tuned to HW News. Watch us live on 11th of December at 7 a.m.